This episode is brought to you by Ardan Labs Education. Sign up today to learn advanced concepts in Go, Docker, Kubernetes, Terraform, and more. Visit ardanlabs.com/education for more information.
Welcome to the Ardan Labs podcast. Our special guest today, I'm not even sure where she's from. We're going to find out soon, but it's Brit Myers. Brit, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Bill. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, where are you talking to us from today?
I am in sunny, warm Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh my God.
Not sunny, not warm. I think it's 4 degrees outside. My kids had a snow day, a cold day.
Oh man, I got family, and I got a place in Huntsville, Alabama, and family, and it's like the same thing right now. Oh my God, I had the worst scare, Brit. I had the worst scare yesterday. So my brother-in-law couldn't get to the house until the afternoon, and we already had a night of like 9-degree weather, so he couldn't start the faucets running. So he goes to the house yesterday at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and he tells me that the sink didn't want to start, but it got started. And so I'm like, okay, water's running through right. 3 hours later, my Simply Safe system's firing an alarm that the water sensor under the sink is going off.
Oh no.
So now I'm panicking because the roads are icy. He shouldn't be on the roads. My neighbor is out in God knows where, he can't fly in. And all I'm thinking is water is like everywhere. Long story short, he got to the house and it was just condensation on the pipe.
Whew.
God.
Yeah.
So,
that could have been
oh
a
my
bad
God.
day.
It could have been, it got warm enough, I guess, where the pipes could have started to, I don't know. I was freaking out for about an hour and a half yesterday. That's all I know. So
I see palm trees in your back, so you're a removed stress.
No, I mean, because I wasn't in Alabama, that was the worst part. But yeah, I'm here in Miami. I went to school in upstate New York, couldn't take the weather anymore, and moved to Miami. So, but this is not a podcast about me. It's a podcast about you. So, a couple things as we get started. First, tell everybody, I call it the 2-minute elevator pitch on what Brit Myers is doing today.
Yeah. So today I am the VP of Engineering at System Initiative, where we are busy working away at trying to remove the paper cuts from DevOps. So we're working on a badass new DevOps power tool and working on taking it to market.
Oh my God, the DevOps side of the world is like the one part of the world I don't want to do anything with. I'm a software developer. I teach that stuff, but the DevOps is. But we have a lot of people in DevOps that listen. So I'm going to ask you for another 60 seconds on that tooling that you're building. Does it have anything to do with Kubernetes or help even with like Kubernetes stuff or?
Nothing specific to Kubernetes. No, we're starting sort of at the ground floor, taking an innovative approach at building a digital twin of your infrastructure. And so we're trying to build as close to a one-to-one model as we can of your infrastructure. And so Kubernetes could run on the infrastructure you would provision with System Initiative if you so choose, but certainly doesn't have to if you don't want it to.
It's just like you have your own data center and your own hardware and your own virtual machines and your own.
Not yet. We're starting with AWS, but if you can imagine sort of the role that, your Terraform or Pulumi or the CDK and infrastructure as code, this is sort of instead of, flat files, infrastructure as code, what we're building is a digital twin, a model of your infrastructure where you can model the resources you need. You can interact with it. We're capturing the relationships between configuration data and starting there. And then we'll work our way up as we continue to grow and mature.
So this wouldn't be my production system, but this would let me figure out what my production system has to look like.
It could, yeah. We don't have it entirely implemented yet. Earlier versions of System Initiative had a feature that we call Discovery, which is like, point me at your AWS account or accounts and like show me what I've got and sort of like construct the model. But, effectively what you'd be able to do is say, hey, like how many VPCs am I running and how many subnets and like where are these EC2 instances and show all of that in.
And cost.
Yeah. I mean, sort of the way that the system works is it's a hypergraph of functions under the hood. And so you can like effectively drive all of the configuration you need as well as the behavior all within the product itself. So keeping you in context, keeping you in the application, but pulling sort of the information you need from disparate systems to kind of put it all together in one place.
So you're like stealth right now, or can people sort of demo?
Not stealth anymore. We were when I started, we were still in stealth. We came out of stealth last year, and we're working with some early customers now and marching towards sort of a SaaS launch later this year.
So I just want to ask one more question about this before we jump into what the podcast is all about. I'm kind of curious, especially if you were there sort of from the beginning, like what was the pain that caused somebody to decide to invest all this time and money into this problem?
Yeah, so I haven't been there since the beginning. I joined about 7 months ago, so lots of the iterations happened before I joined. But Adam Jacob is our CEO and co-founder, also formerly known as a founder and CTO of Chef. So Adam has lived the pains, seen the pains, and even sort of the DevOps movement, the DevOps revolution as it has come. All of those things that we wanted to solve, we are still worthy of solving, and we haven't gotten there yet. We're not done. And so here we are with System Initiative.
I've heard of Chef. Like I said, it's not my world. I work really hard to stay away from this world, but I've heard Chef. So that gives me a better deal. That's nice. And I guess you like the ops stuff because you wouldn't be there if you didn't.
I'll say so. Adam and a number of the members of the team have sort of your sysadmin into ops, into DevOps path. I took your path, which is software development into like, what are these problems and why can't my team move faster? Like, why are they all miserable dealing with all of these different tools? And sort of I followed your journey into DevOps from the from the dev side in.
Yeah, except you jumped the hurdle and I'm not going anywhere near it. So that's good though. We need people that are interested in different things or nothing gets done.
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure.
Okay, now I've got to do something that I do not regret, but I have to do it. I have to age you a little bit. So
Uh-oh.
I need to know what year it was when you graduated high school.
I graduated high school in 2009.
2009, everybody. That just gives us a general sense of where tech was
That is the best way anybody's asked me how old I am, by the way.
when you graduated high school.
Yeah.
That's it right there, 2009.
It's an innocent. It's so innocent.
Yeah, but that's when you're 17, 18, and having to make some next level life choices. But I want to talk about time before 2009. But I don't know if you've listened to any of the shows, but here's my very first favorite question I love to ask the guests. All right, now clear your head. Don't think too hard. Don't think too hard. First memory pops in your head of you working on a computer and having one of these sort of like amazing moments, like I have to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I'm probably I don't know, this maybe is a different answer than you've gotten in the past. That moment for me wasn't before 2009. So I'm kind of an accidental
All right, that's
software
fair.
engineer.
Still good.
I was a bit of a jock. I was a student athlete. Tons of activities. I had a part-time job. I never played video games growing up. None of my friend group was like really, into tech. So aside from, being an early adopter of an iPhone, that's about as close as it got. And, I had like played with, some basic programming and basic scripting, but nothing that was like, aha, light bulb, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And it wasn't until an internship in college that I had that moment, which was
All right, but don't tell me too much more
all right.
because
I
I
won't
want to
tell
get
you.
there. I
So
want to get there.
my moment
I want to
came
get there.
my moment came late.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm a late
All
bloomer, maybe is a way to say it.
right, so I'm going to be looking for that moment as we go through the story. But I imagine 2009, you're 17. Did you ever at least have a computer in the house? Were you using it for homework? Or was
Yeah, we had a computer in the house. I mean, I was a teenage girl. I would get home from practice and hop online and Instant Messenger and figure out what people were up to. And, there wasn't like, we had cell phones, but like texting was limited. So you weren't like texting all of your friends. It was still, you'd get home, you'd hop online, you'd figure out where people were going, and then I'd leave the house. And I spent a lot of time out of the house.
so let's talk about the 4 years in high school because
Yeah.
that's and anybody's listening to the show hears me say this all the time. High school starts that 4 year cycle. You do 4 years in high school, that sets you up for the next 4 years. Then that sets you up for the next 4 years. And then you hit your 30s and that cycle kind of goes away. But you mess up in that cycle, you fall behind or potentially fall or go far ahead of your peers, right? So that time between 18 and just before 30. So what were you kind of really into during high school? I heard you say already that you were a student athlete. So what sport were you playing, or what sports?
I played basketball and soccer in high school, and continued playing basketball in college. So I spent a lot of time playing basketball in high school, like a lot of time playing basketball in high school.
What was your position?
I was a point guard. I was a point guard, but I I grew late. Like I grew, like an inch in college, which for women is a bit unheard of, is to like grow that much that late. So like I found myself as a D3 point guard, but I was like the tallest D3 point guard in the league or in the conference because everybody else was like 5'1", 5'2". I don't know, I'm sitting, I'm 5'9". So I was, there were some forwards and some shooters that were about as tall as I was, but most of the women I had to guard were a head smaller than me.
So you're a good ball handler then. You were handling. Wow.
I used to be anyways. I'm a bit rusty, but at one point I would say yes, I was.
Yeah, I tried. I did sports. I was mostly baseball, and then ran a lot of track in high school. I just didn't grow. I was so small. It's hard in high school to. You don't start getting the body mass, right?
Mhm.
It's hard. But
Mhm.
basketball was really hard, right? Because and trying to like dribble a ball without looking at it is almost impossible. So it's
Trying
a
to teach
skill
my
set.
daughters now, and they're like, "Why do you have to do this?" Well, yeah, well, you're gonna run into somebody.
Yeah,
Ask
you
me
have to
how I
see where
know.
you're going.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, that's brilliant. So I imagine that consumed a lot of time after school. Was there anything else that you were doing other than the basketball?
I mean, I held jobs. I always worked. I started working when I was 14. Whether it's babysitting or, I worked at local rec centers running camps or, basketball tournaments and leagues
Oh, that's
and
cool.
kids camps. So I was pretty, I was very focused. So you mentioned the 4-year chunks. I obviously had a 4-year chunk of high school. I had a 3-year chunk of college, and I think it was like later in my high school career that I started to realize, how expensive life was, how expensive college was, and you know, needing to do what I like. What could I do that's in my power to help improve my situation?
But when you're in that senior year of high school, are you thinking about college? Are you thinking like, have any idea what you really want to do other than maybe play basketball?
Yeah, other than playing basketball and sort of, trying to balance the where do I want to play and what types of then programs do those colleges have that I would like, what then degree would I have at the end? It was sort of for me it was like it was a multifaceted decision. It wasn't just what am I going to study? It was what am I going to study? Where am I going to study it? And that those things are dependent on each other. And then also like am I going to play? And then where?
I'm assuming you grew up in Ohio. Where'd
I
you
grew up
grow
in
up?
Ohio. Yep, I grew up
Okay,
in
okay.
Ohio. Born in Cleveland,
All
born
right.
and raised. I always knew I liked math. I liked science. My high school didn't have any tech outreach exposure really. And knowing I liked science and math, everyone's like, "Oh, you should be an engineer." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." Not knowing it's like, "Oh, there's like lots of types of engineering." What kind of engineer? And so my grandfather was a civil engineer, and I'm like, oh, well, he did that. Buildings are cool. I guess I can, I can do that. And so I applied to be a civil engineer at the university I played at, and
Which school is that?
I went to Carnegie Mellon.
Carnegie Mellon is D3.
Carnegie Mellon, yeah, D3. Yeah, they're in like the researched small school conference. So Case Western, NYU, U Chicago, Brandeis, Emory. Probably missing some Brandeis, yeah. So yeah, those were sort of all the teams the places that we played. But
But that's a great school. I mean, that wasn't an easy school to get into.
well, and that's I didn't get in. I didn't get into the engineering school. So I
Ah,
applied to be a civil engineer. I didn't get in. And in my application essay, you had to pick two colleges. They separate the school by colleges, right?
yeah.
So I had to pick two colleges. Was my first pick? What's my second pick? My first pick was the engineering school to go be a civil engineer. My second pick was the science school, and I'm like, well, I'll just be a math major. So if engineering doesn't work out, I know I like math, and if I can prove that I'm smart, maybe somebody will give me something to be smart about, and I'll figure it out as I go. Uh, and so I became a math major because I didn't get into the engineering school.
Did you go after any scholarships to play ball, or you ended up being a walk-on?
So D3 they don't do like
Oh,
Division
they
3
don't
doesn't
do
have
scholarships?
scholarships, not in the way that
Oh,
sort of D1 and D2
oh, I didn't know that.
do. I had a couple of D2s that I was like looking at, but I knew that I was not going to be a professional basketball player. And so it was like important to me that like that while I was going to school to play basketball, it was a secondary. I was going to school to invest in an education that needed to pay off. And, that's sort of how I wound up at Carnegie Mellon. And I didn't end up playing. So I graduated in 3 years instead of 4. And I didn't play my third year so that I could graduate in 3 years, because I ended up taking just an awfully enormous amount of classes to get out early.
That's amazing. So okay, time out, time out. That's all good. We got to talk about that for a second. So you decide you're gonna go to Carnegie Mellon. You're gonna study math, which in and of itself isn't like an easy topic. I failed calculus one.
None of that honestly crossed my mind. Like, I think about that a lot. I was just like, I don't know, maybe it's just sort of the youth, what was it, invincible? Like, I was like young and invincible. Like, it didn't even cross my mind that I wouldn't be able to complete the program or that I wouldn't be able to handle the classes. I don't, it's going to be hard. It's going to suck. I'm going to have to figure it out. Like, I didn't think it would be easy by any means. It never once crossed my mind, like, can I do this? I don't know. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing.
I think it's a good thing. I don't think that was a bad thing, and I think my statement was more along the lines of I didn't get into civil engineering, so I went into math, and my brain goes, I mean, that's basically the same. It's not like, oh,
That's
I
how my
went into
essay
math.
wrote. That's how my essay read.
But if you're gonna do a math degree, my other than going to work at NASA and calculating orbital orbits and stuff like that, my brain always thinks the track is going to be teaching. So
Yeah, yeah.
where was your head? Just I don't care. I just gonna learn the math and
Yeah, I really like freshman year. I really tried to, I spent a lot of time in like the career, whatever placement offices or whatever, like the career coaching services at the school, and like talking to professors. And so I had basically whittled it down to like computational finance. So I was going to be some like a Wall Street nerd, operations research. So something logistics, like a quant in a business setting, um, what else was the other thing was, and then there was this world even then of like machine learning and AI that was happening. And I looked at that and thought, man, that looks like a lot. It looks really hard. I don't know that there's any applications, but I'd sort of the that internship I mentioned gave me some exposure, which I can certainly dive more into. But it was really like actuary, operations research, or computational finance. Like, those were my 3 freshman year at the end that I had whittled it down to of, all right, I think one of these 3 things is going to be my job. I don't know. We'll find out.
you don't sound. I don't think you're that excited at the time you're laying out these three options.
Not operations research. I liked, like, the idea of it. I was interested in actuary. I was like, well, like, somebody has to do it and it pays pretty well, and I think I would be good at it. And that was sort of my answer on like computational finance also. It was like, well, somebody's got to do it. Like, somebody is doing it. It is a job. It will pay the bills. I think I would be good at it. And so maybe I would do that. Like, I think I've always just been like, for example, there's no movie I can think of that I would say that I thought was bad or that I didn't like. Like, I'm just like a generally pretty easygoing. I can like make do with what exists. So this idea that like, oh, I have to go find what I'm passionate about, or that I have to go find something I'm like really interested in. I'm curious enough. I can make most things interesting if the work is interesting enough. And so I had just sort of, taken that approach and not looked at it as like, well, what I really like, do I want to be an actuary? Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it was sort of a means to an end, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm getting a sense from you that it's the ends was I just want to be independent and have enough money to enjoy the life I want to have, and I don't particularly care what job gets me there as long as I have that time. That's kind of what I'm getting a sense.
And not because I want to like live a miserable life, but just because I can just make, I just don't have many preferences, like, it's like if I enjoy the people I work with, even if the work isn't the most like, there's like interesting and then there's like enjoyable, and I can find like not interesting things pretty enjoyable.
No, it's interesting. I'm curious why you pushed. to graduate so quickly? What
Oh
happened
gosh,
that made you?
it's just expensive. Like college is expensive. I mean,
But
I
you had to pay for it anyway. I mean, you had to pay the credits anyway. You only got a year of living expenses kind of taken off the table.
yeah, but so my mom works at a local community college here. And so because of that, I was able to take a ton of like, Psych 1, 2, and 3 and Intro to Religion and English, like all of the sort of gen eds,
Like dual
non-math
enrollment,
classes.
dual
Basically, yeah.
enrollment in high school.
Not in high school and college. So, in the summers between freshman and sophomore year and sophomore and my third year, I was taking classes in the summer. So
You're
it was
taking your,
just transfer credits basically.
you're doing your liberal stuff over the summer and made sure all of that transferred over.
Correct, correct. And so that what that meant was my semesters at Carnegie Mellon were basically entirely hard math classes, which I didn't really think about. Again, I wish I would have because that wasn't the most fun I've had. But yeah, I think at the end, I probably
But you're not answering my
I
question.
saved myself like 50 grand.
Well, you saved money because you were taking the credits.
I saved money because I took those
The
credits.
credits.
And yes,
You
yes.
would have done that anyway. But
And so I didn't need to take the fourth year, and I didn't need to then pay 50 grand or whatever tuition was for the fourth year of college at CMU. And then it also meant that I entered the workforce a year earlier. So when my friends were finishing their senior year, I had started an entry level job as a software developer.
all right, hold on. I want to get to that. But what I find
I'm jumping
interesting.
too far ahead for you. I'm
No, it's
sorry.
okay. I keep pulling you back. It's okay. What I find interesting is when I went to university, I hated going to class, but I loved everything else. I was really sad when I graduated. I just enjoyed the entire social aspects of being away in college and all that. I struggled to go to class and I struggled to graduate. I got it done. But I'm not sensing that you had any social activity. Like,
I mean, I did, but I didn't have, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, because I was a student athlete, like I basically had my network, like I just inherited the athletic department as like these are my people, And so, and Carnegie Mellon, like across the board, it was an incredibly demanding school across all, degrees. And so the, I definitely did not go to college to have fun. And I sort of like knew that going into it, that like, I had enough fun in high school and couldn't afford the fun I wanted in college anyways. And so I kind of looked at it as if what I'm seeking is that sort of, uh, like the spring break trips and the hanging out and meeting up at the bars and all of those. I had just sort of like earmarked that as like, that's for a later me. That's for a later time in my life. And right now, what I need to do is do the work I can to like earn that and to earn that ability to like, live free and what have you.
I feel like you treated it like a job, but
Kind of. I think that is a good way to put it. I mean, a bit.
looking back on it right now, and hindsight is 2020, yada 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 yada. Okay, looking back on it now, if you could go talk to yourself prior to starting the first day of college, would you tell yourself what would you tell yourself to do, or maybe nothing? I mean, I'm just curious if you would tell
Yeah.
yourself to change, go have more fun, or have less fun, or do this. Like, what would you tell yourself?
That's a good question. I don't know that I would change too much. I think it probably would be to like just more like don't be so future focused. Which isn't a it's like I think that I hit sophomore year and I was like, all right, I get college. I did it. Now I'm ready to like be done with it. And not because I didn't enjoy it, but because I chose a degree, like I chose a school and a degree that I knew was not going to be easy. And so like
Were you just done with school? Because I had every one of my girls when they graduated, at least my third one, when she graduated, she just said, Dad, I know the other two got their masters, but I just can't do school anymore. Like, it was this sort of like, I'm done with school kind of thing.
I didn't have that. I actually just what is this year? This is year 2024. Last year I just completed my master's program. I earned a graduate degree.
But that's fair. I mean, that's over a decade, and I expect that she'll do that. But at that time, she was really burnt out on school.
I was just really sick of being poor. I think that was like a big driver. Like I was very focused on the life that I wanted to live, and like what are the things that I can do today to have the life that I want to live and to live the life that I want to live.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's so then. So you're going to graduate a year early with this whole mission in getting a job. We're now talking about maybe
Maybe
2012.
12. Uh-huh.
Okay, the economy isn't bad in 2012. We had the problems in 2008. You said you had an internship. Talk to me about when you got the internship, and I'm just kind of curious if that ends up being your job.
It's a bit sort of not that exact internship, but yeah, I think the internship was after my sophomore year. One of the alumni women's basketball players was a engineering director at a small defense company outside of Dayton, Ohio. So, a little bit of a drive. And they had internships, and she's like, "Hey, do you know how to program?" And I said, "Yeah." And she's like, "What do you want? You want this internship?" I said, "Yeah." So I went and took that internship. And
Where did you learn how to program? Because I haven't heard you writing software just yet.
at that point, I had 2 programming classes, and that was it. So I had like intro to programming 1 and 2.
And what were they teaching you? Java,
It was Python. They taught Python.
Python. Okay.
Get to this internship, and it's a .NET shop. I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess I guess I gotta figure it."
They
And
didn't
I just
tech
like
interview? Oh, it's an interview. It's an internship, so you didn't get interviewed?
not, but because it was my the alumni was my boss. So the who you know.
So you panicking now? Well, you're not panicking because you don't panic. You're just like, I'll
No,
just
I
figure
know.
it
That's the
out.
thing. I was
You
just like,
don't
yeah,
panic.
I'll figure
Yeah,
it
no
out.
big deal.
Now I got to learn C sharp. All right,
No problem.
and I did. I don't know.
I love
you
that.
know, yeah, and I think that sort of I don't maybe it's I think it's a bit ignorant. Like I don't do it on purpose, but
I
I
don't think
have
it's
gotten really
ignorance at
good at teaching
all.
myself things quickly and applying it right away. Like that has become a bit of a superpower for me.
It's your superpower. That's it. It's my wife. Yeah, my wife's superpower is parking. I don't care
I wish
where
I
we
had that
drive.
one.
She can find me a parking spot next to any place. I won't drive anywhere without her because I tell her I married her for her superpower on parking.
That's awesome.
Like
That's awesome.
we all have a superpower. I think your superpower is I know I've never failed. I try to tell this to people. I've never failed before, so why would I fail now?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm hearing from you,
Yeah.
and that's superpower.
And I think there's, failure. I guess I saw failure as like, look, like succeeding doesn't mean you get it all right. It just means you finished. And I just kind of had that like I just have to finish. Like I'm going to make mistakes. I certainly did not graduate with great grades by any means. Like I put my head down and I run through it as fast as I could to sort of earn the degree. I don't remember, like I learn things very quickly. I can forget them very quickly, but I've never really put much weight into it because I can just relearn it again, you know? Uh,
Yeah, when I say failure, I mean like not eventually solving the problem within
right,
the
right,
reasonable
right,
amount. Like, not that you
right.
didn't make mistakes along the way, but like I've done everything I've ever set out.
Right. And if I just keep trying as hard as I can, then like even if I do fail, that if I'm in the right environment, I have the support and the coaching to grow. So like even in that role, there were things I didn't know. And she's like, well, read this or check out this thing, do this tutorial, and it wasn't like completely sort of of my own. I've had lots of help and mentorship and coaching kind of throughout the ways. And so
Did you like C sharp?
it's funny. Like I have a hard time answering that question from the perspective of like the language itself, because I don't think of it in that way. Like for me, it's coupled to like the work that I was doing, right? And so we were working on these just like such awesome projects that were, like I needed to connect it to like a real problem to be solved, and I didn't get that. So that's where like that internship being that moment, like intro to programming wasn't that moment. I didn't have this like, oh my gosh, look what I can do with my hands on this keyboard and this computer, because I didn't really understand how learning about recursion made a difference in the world. I didn't understand how learning how if statements work like make a difference in the world, but showing how you have to architect these classes, and these classes have different methods and they have different functions, and then they interact with each other, and then the end result is now we're driving a Roomba around the office to try to detect the vulnerable points. And it was like, oh no, I get it, recursion, yeah. And so I needed that like concrete example to sort of latch onto, and that was the like aha, it's like, oh, there's art here, like it's not just science. And that's what made it click. I'm like, okay, now how do I get a job in this? I have one internship. How do I get a job? How do I get a job in this? And I like oriented the rest of college around graduating early and building the resume I needed to convince somebody to hire me as an entry level programmer, you know?
So that means that not only were you finishing your math classes, you started taking more programming classes.
Yeah, but not as many as I would have liked, to be honest with you. And I'd sort of, maybe that's probably like if there's a regret, it's like don't be so focused on just the like very linear steps that I sort of see and lay out. Like that it's okay to take detours, it's okay to branch out because there's like implicit value in that. And I didn't know that at 18. I didn't know that at 20. I probably didn't even know that at 25, to be honest with you. And I just kept the same. Well, whatever I would have learned in the classes that everyone's taken now in senior year, I'll learn it on the job.
So did you have a job lined up before you graduated, or did you have to?
Sort of. So I'd found an internship during my last year that was on campus at the Software Engineering Institute in Pittsburgh. So there was like a research, kind of a similar like research heavy job, where there was like this mix between programming and a little bit of math stuff and what have you. So I worked that job, that internship during the school year. I worked it fall semester, spring semester, and then they had basically said there could be a job there if I want it, but you don't have to make a call now. And so after I graduated, I just kept the internship and up my hours. I didn't like sign any new paperwork. I was crashing on my friends' couches because my apartment lease was up and I like didn't want to commit to living in Pittsburgh any longer, so I didn't sign anything new. And I stayed in Pittsburgh with that job until I found one in Cleveland. And then moved home for that in like August of the August, like that summer after my last year, basically.
So like August of 12.
But because I knew because I knew I could work that internship through the summer, I spent no time looking for jobs during the school year because I was taking just like an ungodly number of classes. It was like a thing that I could cross off my list. Like, okay, I have income through the summer. I don't need to worry about finding a job until the fall. So
I got a
punt
place
that
to
problem.
sleep.
We'll figure it out later.
Yeah,
I got
yeah,
a place
yeah.
to sleep. Yeah.
I got a place
I'm
to sleep.
driving laundry back and forth from Cleveland to Pittsburgh.
My brain
Living out
is
of a
full
laundry
right
basket.
now. No, I get it. My brain's full. Let me just focus on this. That will be a problem for another day.
Yeah. And so
And
I think,
then,
so that summer is when I really started applying and then found a
so
job here
w-
in
tell me
Cleveland.
how. Tell me what you were doing to apply. Were you like on Indeed? Are you looking just for software jobs in Python? Like, tell me what kind of your criteria was going into that job search.
In sort of as you might expect, I'm pretty like planning oriented. And so the question at hand was like, all right, I had a boyfriend, I had a long-term boyfriend through college. He lived in Cleveland. My entire family lives in Cleveland. I'm either moving home, getting married, finding a job, or not, and then finding a job. And there's sort of like the like abyss of like, oh, now there's like infinitely many potential that isn't the like market of Cleveland. And at the time, like there weren't remote jobs. It's certainly not for entry level software engineers. Like nobody's hiring somebody who's 21 out of college as in a remote, entry level job at the time. Uh, and so I basically looked pretty exclusively in the Cleveland market for jobs. And not there's like 6 or 7 maybe at the time decent companies that have like pretty large engineering staff. I targeted them. I tried to figure out who I knew at those places. Like, is there somebody who can get me somebody else that I can talk to, like a referral or, how can I get like tips on like how to pass the interview or what have you? And so I don't know, it was pretty old school, I would say, some college board stuff and yeah, Indeed or Monster or like whatever just looking for, it's like, give me tech companies in Cleveland. And then I just like look at the job boards and like, is anybody hiring junior or entry or, and I didn't look at tech stack. I didn't look at even like the job descriptions at the time all read the same to me. Like it was all just like software engineering, like all the nuances. Like now as somebody who's written lots of job descriptions, there's all these differences. Obviously, I didn't understand any of that. So much of what has happened is just such a stroke of luck in terms of like, there were some things I had that were very targeted and other things that I was just like, I remember starting the job and I'm like, I don't actually, am I like an application? Like, am I like an internal systems developer? Like, I didn't even know when I had started, like what I had done.
Don't jump that far yet. I got questions. If you haven't figured it out yet, Britt, I got questions. I'm kind of interested because you just dropped that you had a long-term boyfriend. What was your boyfriend doing at the time in Cleveland? Was he's going to school? Was he working?
He was a teacher, so he had graduated and was teaching. So he had it was
Grade
a
school? What was he teaching?
fourth grade teacher.
Fourth grade. Is this the gentleman you ended up marrying?
This is my current husband, who is now a stay-at-home dad of 4 kids.
I was wondering if he was still teaching because
No,
that profession is impossible at this point.
no, not he retired early from that profession. He tried sales for a while, but yeah, since COVID now he's home full time, keeping the house afloat, keeping all of our lives running.
I think he's living the dream right now. I tease my wife all
I
the
don't
time.
I could not do what he does. I am like forever grateful. I could not do what he does. I
I,
could
I,
not do what
I
he does.
I managed 7 kids, Britt. Uh, 5 in my first marriage, and I know how like exhausting that is. Just 3 hours is you lose your mind fairly quickly.
I always knew I wanted to be a mom, and I always knew I wanted to be a working mom.
Nice. So what I find interesting is that you're basically applying to anything within the realm of
Like if
less
it had
experience,
developer
like
or
entry,
software in
right,
the name, I was like, all
in the
right, yeah,
name.
I'll apply. Yep.
Now, what I find interesting about that, you're really you're like a unicorn. Okay, you're super interesting. You know, they I've heard that when it comes to job hunting, a guy if a guy hits checks like 2 out of the 10 boxes, he'll apply. But if a woman doesn't hit like 9 out of 10 boxes, she won't, uh, which is a crime to me, right?
Hmm.
And you're like you're not doing that. You're checking 2 boxes. You're going for
I maybe even I don't maybe no boxes. I didn't
it.
really even I was just like I'll try. Yeah, and it's
I
funny.
love
Like
that.
once I heard that quote, I'm like, oh, people don't do this. Like I just I've never said no. To like, oh, is this a thing you could do? Like, yeah, I could probably figure that out. I did not know that was strange until later.
I don't find it strange, and when I tell people that, they look at me like I know, but I'm like, let them decide whether or not. Plus, they may have another job that you're perfect for.
Exactly. Or you meet somebody. It was like those were things that I think early, my family, my parents, my grandparents, like those types of things is like, look, you can only control yourself. And the way that my husband and I talk about it with the kids, it's like what my strategy has been through my life that I didn't name it then, but I can name it now. Just like increasing the chances I'm in the right place at the right time. I just want to increase the chances I'm in the right place at the right time. And I will not be in the right place at the right time if I self-select myself out of being in that place because I chose to, that I'm basically willing to say, I'm willing to pass up the thing that happens if that's the right place at the right time,
Timing is everything.
Which is not to say I don't work hard and that like I'm an intelligent person. I bust my ass, but I do know that like it's not always, they say the same thing in product. It's not always the great products that win. It's not the great art. Like the right decision doesn't always win, right? It's like there is this like luck spin on most things that happen.
But I also think there's an aspect of saying yes to things more often than saying no, right? Like that movie I made, she was 15 at the time, but I made the 15-year-old watch Yes Man because she got into some rut with Jim Carrey. She got into some
Oh,
rut
yes,
that
yes, yeah, okay.
everything was no, 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 no. And I got to a point where I'm like, all right, you're saying no too quickly, too often. And I made her watch this movie. And then I got her somehow to say yes for like a month to things. And her life was a little bit better, but she's 15, 16, so it didn't last very long. But I think there's like you can't say yes to everything,
You
obviously.
can't,
And
yeah, you
at
don't
the
want
end
to
of
take
the
on too much.
movie,
And yes, yeah.
yeah, you get to that conclusion in the end of the movie, but you can't say no to everything either. So yeah, there's all that to that. Okay, so you applied to a bunch of jobs. How long does it take you to land this job? And what was the job and what was the company?
It was pretty quick. And again, this was like I applied, I researched the company. The company was Hyland Software, and that's ultimately where I ended up spending a decade. So the first job I got was the place I spent almost 10 years, and what has just been enormously impactful in my life, right? For all positive reasons. I applied. I remember like it was like within the week they said, "Hey, yeah, we'd like to do a phone interview." And for some reason, I thought that the reason they were doing a phone interview was because I was in Pittsburgh. And so I replied and said, "Oh no, I come home. I go to Cleveland a lot. I can come in." Not knowing, again, like just ignorant, not knowing that, like, no, the phone screen is a screener because they don't know how much time they want to spend on you yet. They maybe don't want you to meet the hiring manager yet, right? No idea. So I just, oh no, I can come in. So I elevated my interview on accident. Uh,
Wow, nice.
I went in on a Friday for the interview. It was late, and I had talked to somebody who worked there previously, and they said, the interview is going well the longer it goes, right? Like if they end it early, or you're running out of things to talk about, that's a bad sign. And I think my interview was like 3 p.m. on a Friday. Again, bad idea. I don't, whatever. And I was out of there by like 3:45. And I called my then boyfriend. I was like, screw this place. I didn't get the job. They kicked me out after 45 minutes. Like I really wanted it. It was the one that I wanted. And I'm all upset. I'm crying, whatever. And go back to Pittsburgh on Sunday night, show up to my internship, my summer job Monday morning, and there's an email with a job offer. I'm like, what?
What?
Like,
That's
so I,
wild.
accepted and packed up my laundry basket of things that I've been living out of, and, and drove back to Cleveland and never looked back.
You had to move back in with your parents at that point, or
No,
no?
so I moved and even by that time I was like mostly staying with my boyfriend. So I'm
Okay.
one of the I moved out at 18 and never looked back.
It's hard to move back in after you've been on your own. It's this.
In the same way that I'm a better mom because I work, it's like I have a better relationship with my parents because we're not roommates.
So how long are you with this company?
So that was 2012 and I left at the end of 2021. So
Oh my God.
almost 10 years. I was there almost 10 years.
Wow. That's a long time. You don't hear that very often anymore.
Yeah, of my peer group, I was like the only one that had been at the same place, of everybody that I graduated with for so long.
See, I kind of love this because it opens up a whole slew of questions. So I don't get the sense from you so far that you're one of these people that just become complacent
Yeah.
where you are, and just ride it out for as long as you can. I don't get a sense of you being that person. So being there 10 years is super interesting because that means that they must have been allowing you to work on different stuff every 18 months or something. Talk to me about that.
So Hyland Software is headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio. They were founded in 91. So, it was a 20-year-old company by the time that I joined. When I joined, there were, I think, just over 1,000 employees total. By the time I left, so yeah, when I joined, about 1,000 employees, mostly in Cleveland, some sort of a couple satellite offices around the country, but that was pretty much it. By the time I left, they had over 4,000 employees, a number of acquisitions, employees around the world. So part of where I was able to, part of why I never had the chance to be complacent there was it had felt like I had basically worked for all of these different companies throughout, So between new products, new projects, I had.
What was your title when you started, and what was your title when you left?
Yeah, so when I started, I was a junior software developer, and when I left, I was the associate vice president of cloud engineering, and I was responsible for basically all the cloud native development that happened, both from the heritage company as well as it was like 6 acquisitions that had happened in the previous 2 years.
So you have like the mailroom story. Like I started in the mailroom.
Kind
I
of,
love that.
kind of,
Yeah.
kind of.
No,
I mean, it
I
wasn't a mailroom; it was all in engineering. But yes,
but you know what I'm saying, though.
I
You know what
started
I'm
at the
saying.
very bottom of the ladder, and I
Yeah,
ended
yeah,
up
yeah.
towards the top of the ladder. Yes, yeah.
I have a niece and a nephew that are really just starting out, and I'm trying to tell them, like, just get into this company. I don't care what you do. I almost don't even care if you mop floors that in the machine shop. Just get yourself in there because once they see you and once they see what you can do, you're not going to be mopping floors very often, like for long.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. That's wild.
Yeah, so I had been promoted obviously a lot of times. I was a junior software engineer, then I was an associate, and then I was just a software engineer, whatever, like the level 3, and then I was a team lead, and then a manager, and then a senior manager, and then a director, and then an AVP. And um and yeah, I think at each of those, I mean, it's exactly what you described. I just like solving problems. I love working with people, and when you're really good at working with people to solve problems, then you tend to just get more problems to solve. And I wasn't doing too bad of a job at it, so they just kept giving me more.
Let me ask you a question because you're young, you're super young going in there. How long was it from the time you went from the new term IC, right, an individual contributor, to management? Because how old were you? Because that's a scary time for a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me look.
Not old, but maybe how many years in would be fine?
I
Because
think
you're
I was a
basically
team
start
lead. I want to say I was a team lead within 2 years.
okay, but you're still getting your hands dirty coding and stuff.
Yep. Yeah, and then I was a manager probably around year 5, I would say.
Right, and year five would have you be about 24,
I was
24, 25.
20, yeah, 25, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah. I'm like looking at my own LinkedIn because I'm really bad with dates.
that's super interesting to me because there's this fear in industry that if you become a manager too soon, you lose your skill set
Hmm.
to say get another job if you get laid off because chances of getting another management job is less than say being an IC again. And the longer you're a manager and the less you're coding, let's say in our profession, you lose. To me, the skill set of being able to write code is the safety net. It's the life jacket.
Right. Right. Right.
You walked
Right.
away from that almost at 25.
Yeah,
Did you ever think about what would happen if, especially during acquisitions, I was the one?
not then I didn't. And I think part of that was I knew, even like taking that manager job at the time, I knew enough about where the company was going that like I wanted to see it through, if that made sense. So like I didn't like mark sort of like an exit strategy until I really got to sort of like the executive level or like that director level. Then I thought about it. So late. I thought about it late, I suppose, which was like, okay, if I'm a director, is anybody going to hire me at a VP? Or if I'm an AVP, is anybody going to hire me at a level like to leave a company to get promoted through leaving can be tough, like really tough. And, so I had sort of started to think about okay, if I'm going to leave, I'm either leaving for like a lateral move or potentially a demotion because levels and jobs and places and what have you. And I don't know, it's like, okay, I guess that's what I'll have to do. And then I have to prove myself that I'm worth it and can do more, and then go do more and do more. But it didn't, yeah, I don't know, it didn't cross my mind. But I also didn't, I don't know who I was talking to earlier. Like, I don't long for the days that I could just like show up, talk to nobody, and like get on the keyboard and like get some work done myself. Like I don't long for that because I don't know. I think that's part of it.
That's not who you are anymore. That's not
Yeah, like
today. So I became a director probably when I turned 30, but I was a single income family.
mhm.
I needed the money, but I made sure the whole time I was a director that I wasn't writing new code, but I was doing code reviews.
Mhm.
Everybody would
Yeah.
come in my office, and I was at least doing code reviews. I kept my skill set up because that's almost the first job that gets cut during an acquisition. And sure enough, acquisitions come in, and now you got to be go back to programming. I didn't lose the skill set, which was yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's the problem there, right?
I think maybe going back to like my superpower of like, well, I'll just learn it again. Like when I have applied for, I didn't obviously take any of them, but I'm sort of in this like always be looking. I'll tell anybody that anybody that'll listen, anybody that works for me, it's like you always should know what you're worth. You should always be willing to take a phone call. Yeah, like always. I don't. Why not? Like, yeah. So I've taken like lots of interviews for random jobs, and yeah, I'm like cramming the night before, like, okay, whiteboarding questions. Like, what are they going to ask me? Like, granted, like, meanwhile, I'm sitting on the other side of the table that same day, interviewing somebody with a whiteboard problem, and then like going home that night and being like, oh, I should like figure out how I would answer these things, you know? Uh, so I think that's part of where I never stressed about it. And even now I don't stress about it because I just will, I'll just relearn it versus like I'm bad at maintaining. I'm bad at maintaining what I know. I have to let it come in and out because my brain doesn't work that way.
So now tell me, after 10 years, what happens? Because I feel like everything is still stable. So this opportunity somehow comes across your vision. Talk to me about that. How does that happen?
I had an end post in mind for my career at that company, which was like I had the goal of like making it to the executive team. It's like if I can make it to the executive team, like I've done it. And I did that. And I don't know. And it was, just sort of like the luck of the timing, like because I was always willing to take a phone call. I had also at that time, I had just started my grad program. So this was, yeah, fall of 2021. I just started grad school and something fell out of the sky. That was like it was scary. It was something I hadn't done before. It was, and so I'd like I looked at all of those signs and thought well, why, like if it's not now, when, and granted 2021, like we're in COVID, like the end of sort of lockdown, remote work is not going away. And so the opportunities were increasing. And I think I also looked at, you talked about you don't think I'm somebody who is willing to be complacent. I think I saw that I could be successful and be complacent, and I just like didn't want to do that. And what was in front of me, and the other option that just dropped in my lap was go join a startup in a domain I don't know, with a tech stack I don't know, with people I don't know. And it was like all of the opposite in so many ways that I knew I needed something different. And it was like a matter of like, what's the right different thing in the right timing? I didn't have intention of staying at Hyland for 10 years. I didn't think I was going to spend my whole career there by any means, And so it was just sort of another time thing. I wasn't actively looking to leave, I suppose, like.
But you're not telling me. I haven't heard anything in your story about going to meetups or forming communities or being around people outside of the company you're in. So I'm trying to understand how this thing falls in your lap, because it would have had to fall in your lap through people at work. Was it
No,
did some
LinkedIn. I
recruiter
think,
just
yeah,
show
a
up?
recruiter. Yeah, and
Just
so
a recruiter.
I had at that point there was probably 3 or 4 different recruiters that I had like come to know, where they would be like, "Hey, we have this thing. What do you think?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I don't think that's for me." And sometimes they'd be like, "Oh, yeah, I don't know, maybe I'll have a call." Uh and so I had done maybe, I don't know, by the time I accepted the one that I left Hyland for, I'd probably had 15 or 20 over the course of 2 years, just random things drop into my lap, and it's like, "Nah, that's not the right one." That's, whether the money's not right, the opportunity is not right, the timing wasn't right. And one ended up being right for all of those things.
You were taking interviews essentially during COVID anyway. You were at home. It's a lot easier.
Always. I always have been. I always have been. I've not always been like, cold calling, just like applying for jobs or searching for jobs necessarily, but in whatever passive way I could afford. And like, yeah, I didn't go to meetups, or, I'm not really involved in the Cleveland market, like the Cleveland tech scene here, as much as I wish I was, and like as much I wish I was. But when things would happen, I would just sort of not say no. I would just say yes.
I've run my own businesses. It's my second one. So for maybe about 15 years, I've run businesses. You're basically doing that right now. You're hiring people. And so I have a rule with the people that I hire, especially directly. Don't come to me ever and tell me you have another job, because I'm not playing that game. Go, I wish you the best of luck. If you need something, you just had a life event, you just had a baby, something happened, and you need something, you come to me first. If I can do it, great. If not, I'll help you find the next job.
Yes, yes,
I'm
yes.
kind of curious what your philosophy is on that because you're very open right now and saying that I'll explore opportunities even if I'm happy, um, because I think it's important because it's really about your life. It's not about anybody else's life. But then you have to be that open with everybody you're hiring. So I'm kind of curious what the messaging you give to the people that you're hiring.
I would say like at System Initiative, like when I joined, part of the onboarding deck that we run people through, Adam and Mahir, like we have sort of a sentence that is like, this is a job. This probably will not be your last job. When it is not, like when that moment comes, whether for reasons we know, whether it's for reasons like you will leave this job, and I wish you well. And I will, and it's exactly what you said. Like I will do the things, I will do whatever I can to support you, what have you. And so that structure, like the cultural expectation of that from the founders to the company at System Initiative is like amazing because it does relieve this like pressure to sort of, and I felt this pressure at Hyland a bit, where it was like, well, I need to be loyal. I need to be loyal to the company and say, please don't ever quit. But I can't be loyal to the company and also be loyal to you as a human being and say, yeah, you should be willing to make 20 or 30 less grand because that's what we're paying. It never fit for me and it always felt awkward. But I would basically toe that line at Hyland unsuccessfully.
The idea of loyalty to me is give me the 2 weeks. If I need a third, give me a third. Don't leave me like high and dry the next day.
Yeah, and it's funny because when Hyland was only an American company or only had American employees, the expectations were the same. But when you through acquisition or just through organic growth, you start to hire in other countries. Like other countries have like vastly different employment law, which changed that dynamic in such an interesting way that sort of cascades up to the culture, right? Because it's the same. Don't quit me because I need you and I hired you for this job and we need you here, but you're disposable and I can lay you off, or I can fire you with no notice, but I expect 2 weeks back. And so that dance has just always been, I don't know, it's an uncomfortable part of management, and the sort of the structure and the way that we talk about it at System Initiative, like I love the openness of it, which is like, we're here to be good people. I hope that you can be a good people, and I want you to thrive and be successful as an employee at this company. If there's an opportunity that doesn't exist for you here that you want to pursue, if it's just not the right fit, if you're not happy for whatever reason, you're bored, whatever the things are that you want to leave, I will help you and support you and we'll figure out, and I'll give you everything that I can to do that. And I need the opposite to be true, which is what you're saying. If something's going on with you or your circumstances change that would cause you to like, look, I'm happy. I love everything. The only thing I hate is, whatever. I'm having a kid and now daycare is going to be another 14 grand a year. Okay, talk to me about that. Like I don't want that to be the moment that you go look for another job, because that's the thing we can talk about. And so like that having that conversation go both ways, and also to say, it comes with the like, in order for you to be successful here, like it's my job as a manager to give you that feedback, to give you the sort of structure and the framework and the guidance, and like set all of those expectations. If you can't meet them, like that would be a reason that you would no longer work here, is if you're not meeting the expectations. And like, so it's all kind of like wrapped up in this piece, which is like, we want what's best for you, but we need what's best for the company. And by and large, what's best for you is what's best for the company, because we work in a thought-oriented, creative space where the stresses outside of your life can have such an impact on what you're doing in a way that doesn't necessarily apply to just every discipline or just every, every job. And yeah, I don't, that framework existing from a company culture perspective is a thing I didn't know I needed.
I'm a person that hires fast and fires fast, but there's different philosophies. Like a Google is like a hire slow, fire slow, you know. Kind of where's your philosophy in that?
I like to hire fast, but fast doesn't mean it's like a one call and then I say you're in, like the choice to join a company is a big one. And I want to make sure that the person I'm hiring knows what they're getting into, and also that we know what we'd be getting into by hiring them and bringing them in, right? And so, like the process that we have today it moves quickly, but it's more than one phone call. It's more than two phone calls. And
No, if it happens within a week or two, it's fast.
yes, yes. I think on firing fast, I don't fire fast, or probably not as fast as I should in some cases. I don't even know that I want to say that it's like a thing I'm working on or like need to work on. It's more just a reflection of like I see the potential in somebody and I'm willing to do a lot of work to like help you get there and whatever that is, you know.
I feel like within 45 days, 6 weeks, you know whether or not somebody's going to work out.
I don't know that I can say that 100%, and maybe that's because it kind of depends on how much the organization or the work or the whatever is changing, right? So there's, I've certainly seen it where, I mean, Hyland is a prime example. The company I joined is not the company I left, and there are lots of people who left the company simply because it got bigger. It got bigger. It felt slower. There was more risk aversion. There was higher, consequences if things went wrong. It's like all of what happens as a company grows. And some people are like, look, this isn't what I want to do. I want to be smaller. I want to be nimble, what have you. And like people have those preferences. And so I think like if the job that you're hiring them for is not going to change too much, then I think it's really easy. Then what you're saying, I agree with 100%. But I think I've also seen where an organization has changed, a team has changed, the job has changed, and the person who's been there for a long time like isn't changing with it or doesn't want to, and where then that's a longer I suppose a longer time. That's more than 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's not the person I'm talking about. Yeah, yeah, that's the one. Because you're hiring, it's interesting to me. I have another question too on that, and that's the interview process. At least for the developers that you're hiring, kind of what's your philosophy on that? Because I think the industry went super crazy on projects that would take a week or more for somebody to do, and I don't get it. I don't want to go on a rant. I just kind of curious what your I could tell you what we do at Arden, but I'm kind of curious what your philosophy and sort of process is.
Yeah, so for engineering jobs at System Initiative, there is a take home assignment, I suppose, or like a take home test. The expectation is that you don't spend more than 4 hours on it, and it's structured to sort of not just show like can you write code, but also like how do you think about it, and how do you like what would we see, like show me your thought process throughout. And I think that so we have we have an assessment, no more than 4 hours. There's obviously a call with me, the hiring manager. There's a technical call with one of the senior engineers on the team. And then we also ask everybody to interview with our director of UX. So that's probably a bit more unusual than what you've seen. But you know, our tool is for engineers, and it is such this uh, I don't know. I think that the impact of how our engineers collaborate with Mark, who's our UX director, who I absolutely love, is so. We found that to be so important, that having him in the hiring loop and his insights and his perspective on who we're bringing in, because it's more than just, are you somebody who can typey type with your fingers on the keyboard? Like it's so much more than that. So we have 3 calls plus a 4-hour screen that you can check our repository, you can see what they are out there, do it on your own time, let us know when you're done, type of a thing. And usually all of that, I think for both of the roles, I've hired 2 engineers since I've joined. I think it took 2 weeks.
Nice. Yeah. I call them vampires. You don't want to hire a vampire. Somebody that just sucks all the happiness out of the room, whether it's virtual or not, because that's contagious very, very quickly.
And how do you handle conflict? How do you communicate? Do you think thoughtfully? Like emotional intelligence, like all of these make such an impact on the team that we want to be able to have a perspective on all of sort of the edges of a person when they come.
My company is like a consulting, contracting sort of company. One thing we instituted was I think it's Woven is the company, a Woven test, which is more of a like a problem solving sort of test that gives us a general idea of Is the person analytical, and have they done anything in the scope of this work before? They don't need to. We've hired people that have scored 30% on that. It's not about the 100. It's just getting a general sense of how they think. And then what I've always found effective, because it happened to me in an interview, God knows how many years ago, and I thought it was awesome. Uh, a real simple programming exercise on the whiteboard where we know there's a couple gotchas in it. Basically, 10 lines of code solves it with a
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
And we get to see if the person's asking questions, if they're getting angry and frustrated, how they're reacting. We've had people lose their mind in this for one reason or another and just said, thank God, like,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm not the big fan of the take home test, but I'm a big fan of let's put this person in a room with one or two of us and see how they work through and we've hired people that didn't solve it, or
Yeah. Yeah.
because we just liked the way they were asking questions and interacted and laughed at themselves, and we're like, okay.
Yeah, we get that with the take home test, not obviously by doing the test itself, but that sort of becomes the thing that you've part of what you focus on in the technical interview is you're kind of diving into like, well, why did you approach it this way? And like, what other things did you consider? And what if I said we did this slightly differently over here? How would that change your solution, right? And so we get a lot of that. Like, what is because that's that's so much of the work. That is so much of what you spend your time doing is debating and not to win, but just to find the most right thing and find the best thing to go, right? Um, so yeah.
Yeah, that stuff's important, super important, but you should be able to do that in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah.
shouldn't take like
I found that
4 months.
it's like the scheduling logistics end up being what draws it out. It's like we could do the whole thing in a half a day or a day, but yeah, schedules and time zones and
Now, getting into the product that for the company you're at right now, are you dog fooding your own stuff?
We are. Yeah, so we have we call them opportunities, effectively a project going, which is deploy SI with SI, right? So, we're first sort of designing what the core infrastructure needs to look like for the product, doing it the manual way, doing it with our hands, uh, like directly through AWS itself, and then are basically mapping everything that we do, all of that configuration into the product, where we'll have if each product is a representation of a digital twin, we'll have two instances that each can control each other's infrastructure. And one will ultimately be sort of the production public facing SaaS instance.
And then you're dog fooding the latest versions before anybody else can get them, because
Correct.
that's
Correct.
really important.
Correct. Yes. Yep.
What's the stack like? What programming languages and
Most of the core like application itself is written in Rust. Our front end is written in Vue. And then we've got some sort of like auxiliary, authentication, other services written in Node. But yeah, mostly Rust for the complicated bits. And then like with
how's your Rust? Because I'm a Go developer for the last 10 years,
yeah,
and my company does training in Rust. We've got a guy that does that. I spent a week looking at it, and I said I'm too old. I've
it's,
aged out.
I had never been exposed to it before this job. I would say I know enough to be dangerous, but not enough to architect the world. But I'm learning. It's another thing that I don't know yet that I'm that I'm working on.
Are you enjoying it? Are you? I'm frustrated by it because I think there's too much abstraction to try to write less code, which hurts my brain, and there's too many ways to do the same thing.
I'm not frustrated yet because I know that it's like my own fault. Like I just I haven't oriented my brain around how the Rust way to do things is yet. And there's like a light bulb moment I'm expecting at some point here in the next in the next few months, which is like, oh, now I get why the syntax is like this, and now I get why this is why you write things this way. I haven't had that light bulb yet, so I'm in this sort of I'll say I'm in the like I don't know, cautiously optimistic or open to, I'm reserving judgment, maybe is the one that's the one I'm looking for. I'm reserving judgment. um but it's wicked fast and wicked performant, and we've been able to make some like the compile type checking, like we've been able to make some like major changes and be very confident about them thanks to what happens at compile time. And I like as an engineering leader, I like that feedback. of not waiting for it to blow up once it hits production. So that part has certainly saved has given me, I've seen the outcomes being positive. What I haven't done yet is like the tactics all of the way.
Yeah, I wish I was more of an ops person because I could be a little bit more intelligent and understanding why I would want to be. I still, again, I'm not an ops person. I build solutions that can run in Kubernetes or anywhere, and I want a general sense of how the production systems work. I don't want to necessarily know how to deploy into that. I want somebody else to do that. But for a lot of the Go developers who will probably be listening to this, who are running small teams, large teams, running on cloud, um, when, how, and why should they consider the product that you guys are working on?
A lot of what's happening in the industry right now is there are people trying to address that problem. What you like the use case you just described, which is like, look, like I don't need to know all of the internals. Just tell me what to do. Like just tell me where to put my stuff so that it just goes on the train and ends up where I want it to go, right? We are not targeting that right now. What we're targeting is sort of how can you handle the most complex cases where Kubernetes doesn't work for you and the train needs to go someplace slightly different and the tools you're using don't let you lift up the covers and change change what's happening at runtime. So we're targeting sort of your senior DevOps engineers, your innovative DevOps engineers in the lowest level to give them as much control as they can. So by starting there, I would say a lot of your Go developers should follow along. And if any of them have ever had a situation where, the platform that they're using, the tools that they're using at the time worked great in 95% of cases, but that 5% case really made them, I don't know, want to do something drastic. Like that ability to be able to widen the gap of, yeah, we handle 95% and also the 5% that you can't do because it's been abstracted away. Like that's where we're really focusing. That's where we're really focusing today.
Like some of one of the biggest challenges product companies like yours, at least in my experience, is conversion, right? So it's you might get lucky and say, well, we started a new project, so we're going to start this and do things this way. But that market space is small. You got to have some sort of migration path for that person who's finally pulling their hair out and want to do this, but it can't take 6 months either, right? So
Yeah, so like one of what I think is sort of fundamentally broken is that we have this trade-off right now that there is like that you can only have the happy path and that other paths also aren't compatible, right? Uh Another way to describe it is like, the 200% problem, which is like I need to know if I want to deploy something to AWS, I need to know AWS. But now if I'm using Terraform, now I need to know Terraform and I need to know how Terraform interacts with AWS. And then I need to know, well, how is my team or how is my CI pipeline interacting with Terraform? Like there becomes so much that you need to know. Uh, like one of the fallacies of infrastructure as code is that it's your single source of truth because it's not actually your single source of truth. It's like it's a part of the truth. It is the truth that says this is what I intended to have happen. It's not necessarily what actually exists in your infrastructure or in the cloud, right? And our tool brings both of those truths together into one and says, okay, here is what you intended to have happen, but like here actually is what's going on, and lets you sort of reconcile between those two realities. So because you can do that, the idea that you have to migrate and you only can use our tool and nothing else starts to go away because now it's not you only can manage your infrastructure with system. I mean, obviously, we hope that you would only want to ever manage your infrastructure with System Initiative, but we know that that's not going to be a immediate sort of thing where everyone's like, all right, you know what, I'm done. Everything I've done, I'm just going to throw it all away. Like they've got to start somewhere, and uh, because we bring both scopes into context in the application, like here's what I intended and here's what reality actually looks like. If you want to still running Terraform, you want to still run Pulumi or CDK or whatever pipelines you're running, you can keep doing that. And we'll be able to tell you, hey, like this is what reality is, and this is what you've defined in System Initiative, and basically support both, if that makes sense. So it's sort of it's a caused problem because of the tools. Like that problem doesn't have to exist where you have to migrate, you know?
it's really important because if you become a disruptive tech, which back in the year 2000, my first company was trying to take the realtors out of real estate. I'm not doing that anymore because that's too disruptive, and obviously you pull them out and they come after you because it's their jobs, it's their livelihood. The companies that worked with the realtors and made their life better are the ones that survived after
Precisely.
2008.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I like what I'm hearing because um, there are a lot of people who have job security because they know that ops environment, they know the tooling, they know how to operate that, and they like doing it.
And they like doing it. They like doing it, but the actual work of doing it is like very painful because you have to know all this stuff and learn all this stuff and keep all this stuff in your head at all times, you know? It is like precisely that person that we're focused on. Like let's improve their world and let their world be magnitudes better and then sort of use that to sort of build on top of, because once you have the one-to-one, once you have the lowest level representation you can of whatever the infrastructure is that you're driving, now you want to talk about how to abstract away complexity. Okay, you can, but you've afforded that ability because you can always open up the hood and be like, you know what, this isn't working. I want to change how this works. And I only want to change it in this one case. And I need to do it right now. And I can still do that, you know? And so we can't start at how do we make this easy? We can't start with like, how do you make it simple? It's how do you make doing complex things enjoyable, you know? And how do you make the experience of doing the hard work an enjoyable experience, a gratifying experience, and not an experience riddled with landmines and paper cuts? Because like the information's out there. Like we have all the context we need. It's just it's not organized in the right way. It's not displayed in the right way. You can't interact with it in the right way. You know, a key part of system initiative is it's multiplayer. And so you can see, oh, somebody's editing this thing over here. I'm not going to touch it because I can see them doing it. I'm not going to trample what they're doing because I can see that they're in it right now, you know? Today, that's like a message in the DevOps Slack channel. Like, is anybody doing this? Anybody touching this region right now? Because I'm going to take this region for a spin, right? Like, we have to coordinate that anyways. Imagine if you didn't have to do it out of band and if our tools brought us together, you know?
No, I love it. Are you? Is your company got any conferences planned where demos and talks and things are gonna be happening this year?
Yeah, I've done a couple. We do. I don't have the list in front of me. I can send you the list. But we've been attending, tons of DevOps days. We'll be continuing to hit DevOps days. I mean, we're really focused on like the early adopters. Like who were those first people that were willing to say, you know what, like we need Terraform? Because not having this stuff tracked in a source code repository is so painful. It's slowing down the engineers, it's slowing down software development. Like we can't, like those are the people who now we need to be able to say, hey, we've come so far, don't settle. We're still moving forward. We've come a long ways and there's still more to go, you know? So that's where we're like really focusing now. We'll be in at config management camp in Ghent, FOSDEM, yeah, a bunch of others. I'll get you a list.
Oh, FOSDEM, yeah, FOSDEM's always awesome. Have you been to FOSDEM?
I have not. I have not.
Oh yeah, you got to go to FOSDEM. That's
On
wild
my
over there.
yeah,
On my to-do list.
on my to-do list, my ever never-ending to-do list.
Yeah. So just real quick, because we're kind of running out of time. You said at the beginning, but just reiterate again exactly what your role is in the organization. I didn't want to guess again. Just
Yeah. I'm the VP of engineering. So there's 17 employees at System Initiative. 11 of them are engineers, and they all report to me.
are you hiring right now? You have open headcount?
We're not hiring, not right now. We have no open headcount now. We have like I don't know, you can subscribe on the list to see to see if there's ones, or we have a Discord channel where we're sort of trying to like pull in members from the community and and help us to sort of shape what this becomes. And we always post, when we have jobs, we post them in Discord. So
So from math degree to executive vice president of engineering, this is where we are in how many years now? We say 2012.
yeah, 11. Oh yeah.
Yeah, look at look at that.
Ironically, I'm really bad at arithmetic for a math major, so you kind of put me on you put me on the spot a little bit.
No, like 12 years. And in 12 years, you went from mathematician to and then you said you just finished your master's degree.
Yeah. Yes.
What did you get that in?
I got an MBA.
Oh, nice. That's
Yeah.
smart.
It was a. I know that I don't need an MBA to be good at my job. I don't need an MBA to have a successful career. But there's just like a general language of business that I never understood, and I really wanted to understand and be able to communicate that way. And
Well, the accounting to me is also all that financial accounting
exactly,
stuff is,
accounting and legal and
it makes it
corporate
easier
finance,
to,
like, yeah,
you're young. This isn't the first executive position you're going to have. The bigger companies are going to want to see that anyway. So
yeah,
I think that
yeah.
was super smart to just get that on your resume. I've always thought about it, and then I'm like, nah, I'm tired.
I did, the executive program, which meant that, I was on site once a month, and the rest was like pretty much remote, a couple weeks here and there. So, with my gaggle of children that I have, it fit into life in the best way possible.
I'm just kind of curious. I know you're really happy and satisfied where you are, and you just started. There's so much to do there. But I'm just curious, Britt, do you have, because you've always had some sort of end game. So what's your end game right now? What you're going to be like an executive at Fang? Is that like where we're going here?
This is a bit. I feel like I should be paying you for like a therapy session here, because this is probably the first time in my life that I don't have the like what's the sort of external milestone I'm working towards.
What's the next step on the ladder?
Yeah, and
And that's cool though. I'm happy you don't have that right now.
it is system initiative for me. Like, that is the thing that I am busting my ass for, because I really believe in what we're doing. I think we have an amazing, like, we have all of the right ingredients. There's like all the right market situation from a timing perspective to say, like, okay, like, can this be something that has a majorly positive impact in people's lives? And I think all those signs point yes. And so system initiative is that next milestone for me, which is, can we build a successful, amazing company with this product that will help teams have drastically better outcomes as it relates to delivering and operating software in the cloud?
It makes my life better because, again, one, I don't have to use it, and two, I get my stuff deployed easier, cleaner, and faster.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm
And
happy.
safer.
I'm happy and safer. I'm happy. I mean, I love right now. I love the Google build and the Cloud Run stuff for simple, container stuff. That's just mind blowing to me. Like that's where I want to be on an ops side.
There's Wing and Space Lift. I mean, there's all sorts of companies, and that is it kind of, like, the question becomes, and as you're a business owner, it's like, what do you want to be competitive in? Like, what is your strategic advantage? And if your strategic advantage is has nothing specific to do with infrastructure, then, and all you need is the easiest way, because the work is in the creative, the work is in the solution, not the code explicitly. There's no value in the code by itself, and you're not selling it necessarily. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're amazing solutions that are coming out, and they're just solving a different problem that is also a problem that needs to be solved. And I love to see what they're doing with it. We're just tackling it from the opposite end, which is also the hardest work needs to happen. It can't just be easy. And how do the operators, how do the DevOps engineers, how do the SREs, how do the folks on call who are wearing the pager, like, what do they do, and what are the tools that they have at their disposal? And it starts with the infrastructure, and it builds on top of that. So that's where we're starting.
I love it. I love it. Just there's this idea of something being deep or something being shallow, right? And the deeper things are, the simpler the API, because all that complexity is pushed sort of down as opposed to something that's shallow. And I feel like you're trying to add another layer to keep this thing deep, to keep the API at the end of the day super simple. So yeah, we need that kind of work done.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, this has been amazing, Britt,
Yeah. This has been
talking
very
to
fun.
you. We're really at the edge of our time here. So if anybody wants to reach out to you after listening to the show, what's the best way? We'll put it in the show notes, but what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'll send you my LinkedIn link. Or, if you want to just join the general discussion about what we're doing and where the industry is and where the market is for DevOps. Like I said, we have a Discord server. We'd love to see anybody pop in there and bring your hard questions, bring your skepticism. We want all of that. We want all of it. So that would be another way. And you can find me in there.
Oh, I love it. And look for System Initiative at conferences this year. We'll try to put that list in the show notes as
Yeah.
well.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
All right, this is Bill Kennedy and Brit Myers signing off from the Ardan Labs podcast, and we hope to see everybody again real soon.